The desert road was empty and silent, and the hot wind moved across the sand like a slow breath. Mark Talon, a human engineer, was driving his rover toward the next outpost. Checking his screens and listening to the soft hum of the engine, he expected another long and lonely trip. But then something strange appeared ahead of him on the horizon. 3 shapes were walking in the burning heat, moving slowly, like their legs were too weak to carry them. He slowed his rover and leaned closer to the window. As he approached, the shapes became clear. A tall alien woman with purple skin and long hair blowing in the wind, and 2 small children walking beside her. All 3 looked tired, dusty, and close to falling on the sand. Mark stopped the rover and stepped out. The heat hit his face immediately, but he ignored it and walked toward them. The alien woman lifted her head slowly, her eyes full of fear and hope. She held her children close, as if someone might take them away at any moment. "Are you hurt?" Mark asked in a calm voice. The woman swallowed hard before answering. "Please, we need help." Her voice was cracked from thirst. Yet she tried to stand straight. Her children clung to her dress, their small bodies shaking from hunger. Mark noticed how thin they were, how their steps were unsteady. Something was very wrong. "We have walked for 2 days," the woman said. "We have no food, no water, and no home." She touched her chest as if it hurt to speak. "Please, human, please help us." Mark felt a shock. Her people were known for their pride, known for never begging anyone, especially humans. But now she stood in front of him with trembling hands, begging for her children's lives. "What happened?" He asked softly. "My husband died in the mines," she whispered. "The company said it was not their responsibility." She looked away as shame filled her eyes. "After his death, they took our home to cover his debts." Her children pressed closer, hiding behind her purple legs. "No one from my people helped us. They said a widow is worthless." Mark felt anger rise in his chest. No mother should stand alone in the desert with starving children. He knelt down and looked at the 2 little ones. Their faces were thin, their eyes too big for their small bodies. "When did they last eat?" he asked. 2 days ago," the woman whispered. Her voice breaking, Mark stood up quickly. "Come with me." He opened the rover door, letting cool air escape. The children looked at it like it was a miracle. But the woman hesitated. She looked scared, unsure, almost ashamed. "Human," she whispered, "I have nothing to give you." She lowered her eyes. "If you want me to work, if you want me to serve, or if you want me as your wife, I will agree." Mark froze, shocked by her words. He had never heard someone speak with such desperation. He gently shook his head. "I don't want anything from you." His voice was firm but kind. "You and your children deserve safety, not fear." The woman looked at him with wide eyes, confused by his kindness. "No one has spoken to me like that since my husband died," she whispered. She helped her children step inside the rover, then climbed in after them. Her hands were shaking as she held the door. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you, human." Mark started the engine and turned the rover around. As they drove away, the woman's children fell asleep immediately, their small bodies finally able to rest. The woman watched them with relief and pain mixed together. "They are all I have left," she said softly. "I will do anything to keep them safe." Mark nodded. "You don't have to do anything except survive." She looked at him again, as if she still couldn't believe someone was helping her. "What is your name?" Mark asked. "Lyra," she answered. "My name is Lyra." The rover moved across the sand, leaving their footprints far behind. But Mark noticed something in his side mirror. In the distance, half hidden by heat and dust, there were other footprints, large ones, fresh ones, following the path Lyra had walked. He felt a chill in his stomach. Someone had been tracking her. Someone strong enough to walk the desert after her. He didn't say anything yet, not wanting to scare her. Lyra leaned back in the seat, exhausted. Her eyes slowly closed as she whispered, "Please, don't let them take my children." Mark looked at the sleeping children, then at the long road ahead. He had no idea who they were. But he knew one thing clearly. He would not let anyone hurt them. The desert wind howled outside, the sun burned the sky red, and the danger Lyra feared was no longer far behind. It was coming closer, step by step, across the empty sand. The rover moved fast across the endless sand. But inside the cabin, the air felt heavy and silent. Lyra sat in the back seat with her 2 children in her arms, their small bodies still shaking from hunger and fear. Mark kept his eyes on the horizon, but his mind stayed on the strange footprints he saw behind him. Someone had followed her through the desert, and that meant danger was not far away. "We will reach the human outpost in 30 minutes, Mark said gently. Lyra nodded slowly, but she didn't look relieved. Her fingers tightened around her children, as if the world outside wanted to tear them away. Mark watched her from the mirror and noticed her fear was deeper than simple hunger or exhaustion. When the outpost finally came into view, a small group of metal buildings hidden behind rocky hills, Lyra whispered, "Are we safe here?" Her voice was thin, almost breaking. "For now, yes," Mark replied. "No one will hurt you here. But inside?" He was not completely sure. He parked the rover and opened the door, feeling the cooler air of the outpost touch his skin. The children woke slowly, rubbing their eyes. Mark carried the smallest one, because her legs were too weak to stand. Lyra walked close beside him, her eyes scanning every shadow, every corner, expecting danger to jump out. Inside the outpost, Mark guided them to a small dining room and placed food packets on the table. The children grabbed the food, but stopped themselves. They looked at Lyra first. As if asking permission to eat, Lyra gave a soft nod, and only then the children began eating carefully, slowly, like they were afraid the food might disappear. Mark watched quietly, his heart tightening. He had seen hungry children before, but never ones who looked so scared to take a bite. Lyra sat down and took a sip of water, and her hands shook with every movement. "Thank you," she whispered again. But there was something else in her voice, deep sorrow mixed with fear. Mark sat across from her. "Lyra, someone was following you." She froze, her hands stopping in mid-air. Her eyes widened, and her breath caught in her throat. "No," she whispered. "They found us. Who are they?" Mark asked calmly, "Why are they after you?" Lyra looked down at her children, as if deciding whether the truth would put them in more danger. Finally, she took a slow breath. "My husband worked in the deep mines," she said. "He discovered something he was not supposed to see." Mark leaned forward. Listening carefully, Lyra continued. "He found a hidden tunnel under the mine, filled with illegal machines. Secret machines." Her voice shook. "They were not built by our people. Not built by your people either." Mark's eyes narrowed. This sounded extremely dangerous. "When he reported it, they told him to stay quiet," Lyra whispered. "And then, one day, an explosion." She looked away. Unable to say the rest, Mark understood. "They killed him." Lyra nodded slowly, tears filling her eyes but not falling. "After his death, they searched our home," she said. "They believed he left something behind." Mark felt his chest tighten. "Did he?" "Yes," Lyra whispered, lowering her voice even more. "He hid a small crystal." Mark frowned. "A data crystal?" Lyra nodded. "Inside it is proof of everything he found." Mark understood the danger immediately. Mining corporations would destroy entire families to protect secrets like that. "Where is the crystal now?" he asked. Lyra held her daughter close and touched the small necklace around the child's neck. "It is here," she said. They will do anything to take it. Mark looked at the little girl, who was too young to understand the danger. He felt anger burn inside him. So that was why she was hunted. So that was why she walked through the desert with 2 children. Lyra covered her face with her hands. I tried to hide. I tried to run. But they always find us. She shook her head. I have no strength left to protect them. Mark reached across the table and placed a calm hand on hers. You are not alone anymore, he said firmly. I will protect you. Before Lyra could answer, an alarm beeped on the wall. Mark turned quickly and checked the outpost security screen. His stomach dropped. A large heat signature was moving across the desert, coming straight toward them. Lyra stood up fast, fear rising in her eyes like a storm. They found us, she whispered again, her voice breaking. Mark grabbed his bag and checked the emergency routes. We need to leave now, he said. We can't stay here. Lyra gathered her children, her hands shaking. Will they hurt you too? She asked. Mark shook his head. They will try. He opened the back door and guided them toward the emergency vehicle. But I won't let them win. Behind them, the alarm grew louder. Outside, the desert wind picked up as the danger moved closer step by step. The hunt was no longer distant. It was right at their door, and this time, Mark knew he had to fight not just for Lyra and her children, but for the truth, for justice, and for the promise he made when he picked them up on that lonely road. The desert sky turned darker as Mark led Lyra and her children toward the emergency vehicle behind the outpost. The alarm kept ringing, echoing across the metal walls like a warning from the universe itself. Lyra held her children close, her steps quick and unsteady. Her oldest child looked back with wide, frightened eyes. The youngest clung to her mother's dress, shaking with every loud sound. Stay behind me, Mark said firmly, checking the path ahead. He unlocked the small transport vehicle, its engines already warming up from standby mode. The moment the doors opened, Lyra helped her children climb inside. Their breaths fast and uneven, Mark quickly grabbed 2 water packs and tossed them into the back. He had no idea how far they needed to run, but he knew they wouldn't stop until they were safe. Mark, Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. Are we going to die? Mark met her eyes, firm and steady. Not today. He climbed into the driver's seat, turned the ignition, and the vehicle shot forward with a burst of dust. The outpost shrank behind them as they sped into the open desert. But danger was not far behind. Mark checked the screen on the dashboard. A red dot approached them fast. Whatever was following them had better engines, better speed, and no hesitation. Lyra leaned forward, fear shaking her voice. They are coming. They will take my children. Mark kept his hands tight on the controls. Not while I'm here. The children huddled together in the back seat. The older one whispered, Mama, I'm scared. Lyra wrapped her arms around them, trying to speak softly, even though her heart was racing. I'm here. I'm here. Don't be afraid, she murmured, but her eyes were filled with terror. Mark pressed a switch on the console, and metal shields unfolded around the vehicle. Small blasts hit the back of the transport. Shaking it slightly, Lyra gasped, her hands covering her children. They're firing at us, she whispered, her voice cracking. Hold on, Mark said, turning sharply around a tall rock formation. The transport bounced across uneven ground, the suspension groaning. He checked the screen again. The red dot was closer. They have weapons, Mark muttered. This isn't a simple chase. Lyra shook her head slowly. They never planned to capture us alive. Her voice was hollow and afraid. They want to destroy the crystal. And anyone who knows about it. Mark clenched his jaw, anger burning inside him. You shouldn't have to run like this, he said. You shouldn't be hunted. Another blast hit the back of the vehicle, louder this time, Mark tightened his grip. "Lyra, take the children and lie flat," she reacted instantly. Pulling the children to the floor, the youngest one cried quietly. But Lyra placed her hand over her child's head, whispering gently, "It's okay. It's okay. Stay low." Mark pushed the transport harder, engines roaring louder. The wind cut against the windows as sand rose around them in swirling waves. The desert looked endless, but Mark saw something on his map, a canyon ahead. If he reached it, he could lose their pursuers in the narrow paths. "Almost there," he said under his breath. "Just hold on." But the attackers had grown desperate. Their vehicle appeared behind them, tall and armored. Rolling over the sand with terrifying speed, a large figure stood on top, wearing dark armor and holding a heavy weapon that glowed with energy. Mark felt a cold chill. This was no ordinary mercenary. It was a professional hunter, a tracker used for dangerous missions. Lyra saw the figure and froze, her eyes filling with horror. "That's him," she whispered. "The one who killed my husband." Mark's heart pounded faster. The hunter aimed the weapon, the charging lights glowing brighter. "Hold tight," Mark shouted. He swerved the transport hard to the left. Just as a blast of energy hit the ground where they had been, sand exploded into the air like a firework. The shockwave rocked their vehicle, slamming it sideways. The children screamed as Lyra held them tightly. Shielding them with her body, Mark gritted his teeth and pushed forward. He raced toward the canyon entrance, a narrow crack between two massive cliffs. The hunter fired again, but this time the shot missed by inches. Light flashed behind them, shaking the vehicle again. Lyra cried out but kept her children's heads down. Mark used every bit of his training, weaving through rocks and ridges. Finally, the canyon opened before them. Mark shot inside, the walls rising high around them. The armored enemy vehicle tried to follow, but the passage was too narrow. It scraped the walls and slowed down. Mark used the moment to speed deeper into the canyon, turning corners sharply. After a long, tense minute, the tracker's signal on the screen began fading, but Mark didn't stop. He drove deeper until the canyon widened into a hidden valley. Only then did he slow the transport and let the engine breathe. Lyra slowly sat up, holding her children close. Tears fell silently down her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. "You saved us again." Mark turned to her, his voice steady. "This isn't over," he said. "They won't stop until they get what your husband found." Lyra nodded weakly. "I know." She touched the necklace around her daughter's neck. "And that is why we must keep running." Mark looked at the canyon around them, the shadows deep and safe for now. He took a deep breath and made a promise to himself. He would not let the hunter reach them. He would not let this family suffer any more. But far behind them, in the darkness of the canyon entrance, a pair of red eyes glowed faintly. Watching, waiting, the hunt was not over yet. It had only just begun. The hidden valley was quiet, almost too quiet. The tall canyon walls blocked the wind, the sunlight, and the sound of the outside world. Mark parked the transport behind a cluster of large stone pillars. Hoping the shadows would hide them, Lyra stepped out slowly. Holding her two children close, her legs were shaking, and her eyes were still wide with fear from the chase. Mark checked the sky, checked the ground, checked every corner of the valley. No movement, no footsteps, no sign of the hunter. For the moment, they were safe, but only for the moment. "Come with me," Mark said as he led them toward a narrow crack in the canyon wall. Behind it was a small metal door, half buried under rock and sand. "This place," Mark explained softly, "was built long ago by human explorers." He pressed a button, and the door slid open with a rusty groan. Inside lay a sheltered room carved into the stone, filled with old boxes, supplies, and dim emergency lights. Lyra stepped inside and felt her breath ease just a little. The children walked slowly, touching the cool rock walls with small, tired hands. Mark set up a small heater and gave them warm blankets. The youngest child immediately curled up and closed her eyes. The older one leaned against Lyra's side, exhausted but trying to stay awake. For a few minutes, the quiet felt almost peaceful. But Lyra couldn't relax. Her fingers kept shaking, and her eyes remained fixed on the entrance. Mark noticed and walked toward her. "You're safe here," he said gently. "No one can find this shelter easily," Lyra nodded. But fear still clung to her like a shadow. Her voice came out soft. "Mark, I brought danger to you." He shook his head firmly. "You didn't bring danger," he said. "You brought truth." Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, the pain on her face deep and heavy. "I never wanted this," she whispered. "I never wanted my children to live in fear." She looked at her hands, as if they were stained with guilt. "Ever since my husband died, every door has closed for us. I begged for help. No one listened. Until you stopped your rover on that road." Mark felt a weight in his chest. He sat down beside her, keeping his voice calm and steady. "You are stronger than you think," he said. "You walked across a deadly desert with 2 children. Not everyone can do that." Her eyes filled with tears, but she held them back. "You think I'm strong," she whispered, but inside, unbreaking. Before Mark could answer, a soft beeping sound echoed through the shelter. A motion sensor. Mark stood quickly and checked the small screen near the door. His heart dropped. Something, or someone, was moving outside the canyon. The hunter had tracked them to the valley. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. She held her children close, her entire body trembling. "They found us again," she whispered. "Why won't they stop?" Mark grabbed an old toolkit from a shelf and began working on the door's security system. "The crystal," he said quietly. "They want the proof your husband left behind." Lyra's children clung to her legs as the lights flickered. The shelter suddenly felt smaller, colder, like danger had already seeped inside the walls. "Stay back," Mark said as he opened a hidden compartment in the floor. Inside were old defensive tools left by explorer shields. Small traps and a remote sensor jammer. Mark started placing them near the door. Lyra watched him silently, her eyes filled with both fear and hope. "You're risking your life for us," she said softly. Mark didn't stop working. He kept his hands steady as he replied. "Your husband died trying to reveal the truth. I won't let his sacrifice disappear." Her voice trembled. "But what about your life?" Mark looked at her, his expression calm. "I can't walk away from people who need help." He nodded toward her children. "And they need it more than anyone." A loud thud echoed outside. Lyra jumped. Pulling her children closer, Mark switched off the lights. Leaving the shelter dim and shadowed, he whispered, "They're close." Footsteps approached the entrance, slow and heavy. Then another thud. Stronger this time, the hunter was trying to break in. The walls shook lightly with each hit. The children began to whimper, but Lyra covered their mouths gently. Whispering calming words with a trembling voice, Mark activated the traps, small metal devices that hummed quietly as they armed themselves. Another hit came, harder than before. Dust fell from the ceiling. Lyra held her breath, tears slipping down her cheeks silently. She whispered, "Mark, if something happens, protect my children." Mark turned to her quickly, his eyes fierce. "Nothing is going to happen to you," he said. "I promise, and I do not break promises." The next strike made the door bend inward. Metal screeching under pressure, the hunter's shadow appeared in the crack of light. Large, cold, and merciless, Lyra covered her children, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. Mark took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Stay behind me," he said. He held a small trigger device in his hand. One move, one moment, and the whole shelter would fight back. Outside, the hunter lifted his weapon, ready to break through completely. Inside, Mark's finger tightened on the trigger. The final confrontation was seconds away, and the truth hidden in the little girl's necklace was about to decide all their fates. The shelter shook again as the hunter slammed his weapon into the bending door. Metal groaned, dust fell, and the children hid their faces against Lara's chest. Mark stood in front of them, his body blocking the entrance, one hand gripping the trap trigger. His heartbeat was steady, strong, ready. He knew this moment would decide everything. The door bent inward one last time. And then, a huge crack ripped through the metal, light spilling into the dark room. Through the broken gap, the hunter's mask appeared, glowing red eyes staring inside like twin burning coals. His voice was deep, distorted, and cold. "Give me the crystal," he growled, "or all of you die." Lyra trembled, pulling the necklace off her daughter and hiding it behind her back. The little girl clung to her mother, tears silent and afraid. Mark whispered, "Stay down," and stepped forward. The hunter raised his weapon. Preparing to fire, Mark pressed the trigger. A burst of electric light exploded from the traps hidden around the door. Metal wires snapped up from the ground, wrapping around the hunter's legs like snakes. Sparks shot up his armor. Shocking him with fierce energy, he roared angrily, trying to break free. "Now!" Mark shouted. The next trap fired, blasting the hunter backward with a small explosive charge. He fell out of the doorway and hit the canyon floor outside. Rolling across the sand, his weapon clattered away. Sparking against the stone, Lyra gasped for air, holding her children tightly. "Come on," Mark said, grabbing Lyra's arm gently but firmly. "We need to move before he gets up." Lyra nodded quickly, lifting one child while the other clung to her hand. They ran out of the shelter and back toward the transport vehicle hidden behind the rocks.